Hello, Mr. Adams again here. We're going to continue our percent review. This is the second percent review lesson that I'll be posting on the YouTube, God willing. I'm doing these videos here back to back, and then I'll be posting them, and hopefully everything turns out just fine. But we're going to go ahead and get our second review in. Now, remember the first review, we talked about a couple of key things. Percent means what? Percent means hundredths. 2 decimal places. Decimal point, tenths, hundredths. 2 decimal points for 2 decimal places, I should say, for percent. So if I'm changing a percent to a decimal, I'm going to move the decimal place 2 places to the left and get rid of the percent sign. So if I have 55%, for instance, that's going to equal, start here, 2.55. Anytime you have a percent, in order to use that percent, you have to change it to a decimal to use it. All right? You have to either change it to a decimal and multiply or change it to a decimal and divide, or whatever, but you're going to have to change it to a decimal. So in this case, 55% is 0.55. Now, remember I also talked to you about any number less than 10% is going to have a 0 in front of it. So let's take a look at, say it was 6%. We want to change that. 6%, 1, 2 decimal places. You got to put the 0 in there. Put your decimal place, 0.06, because percent means hundredths. So 6% is 6 hundredths. Remember I told you a lot of mistakes are made by saying 6% is equal to 0.6. Well, that is 60 hundredths, isn't it? That's not 6 hundredths. 60% is 0.60. This is not correct. So, one of the mistakes that students make a lot is that particular mistake, not moving 2 decimal places on a percent less than 10%. Now, let's take a look at something else. Say you got a decimal within your percent. Say this one right here, for instance, was 6.6%. 6.6%. I'm going to take this number now. I'm going to move, my decimal place is here. It's at the end of the whole number of the percent. So my decimal place is already there. I'm going to go with what they give me. So right here, I'm going to go 1, 2, put my decimal place, get rid of my percent sign, and I'm going to have 0.066. 6.6% is 0.066. I'm going to take 3.25%, or we might think of it as 3.25%. 3.25% is equal to 1, 2, decimal place, 0.0325. You always move 2 decimal places to the left, get rid of the percent sign. Follow that rule. When you start thinking without following the rule, that's where you make your mistake. Follow the rule, you get it right. All right, now, let's take a look. Remember I told you page 79. You need to know page 79 because that's your decimal fraction equivalent chart. On that page, you'll notice things like 7/8 is equal to 0.875. 0.875. Now, let's take another rule, changing a decimal to a percent. Taking a decimal to a percent. That is just the opposite. I'm going to move 2 places to the right, because percent means hundredths. I'm going to move 2 places to the right and put a percent sign. That's 87.5%. If I was just using a decimal like 0.32, that's equal to 1, 2, put your percent sign, 32%, because percent means hundredths. So this is why it's also critical that the students, page 79, they memorize this chart, because here's what they're going to wind up doing, and that they have been doing, some better than others. All right, let's take a look here. Say you have something like 6, and we'll make it a little bit easier here. Say we have 25.5%. 25.5%, and I'm going to change this to a decimal. All right, I start at the end of the whole number. I move 1, 2 places, so I have my 0.25. But then I got to get that half in there. Well, if the students know their decimal fraction chart, they know that 1/2 is the same as 0.5, correct? 1/2 is 0.5. All they do is add that 5 on the end. Don't worry about the decimal, just add the 5 on the end. It's really pretty simple, but if they don't know that decimal fraction chart, then they have to change that fraction to a decimal the hard way by dividing. And the students hate division. They just do. That's why it's so much easier to memorize the chart. They don't have to take the time to do this, saves them time in their homework and so on. Also, say for instance, it was 25.375%. That equals, again, 1, 2, still have my 0.25, but now I got to add the decimal equivalent for 3/8. If they know, if they memorize the chart on page 79, then they know that that's 0.375. 3/8 is equal to 0.375. So they just take this number and add it on the end. All right? That's all you got to do. That's the way it's always done. Right? That's one thing about math. There's a way you do it. Now, sometimes there's more than one way to do it correctly, but you can always do it this way and get it right. So 25.375% is 0.25375. Now, let's take that and say, I want to find 25.375% of 80. Probably isn't going to come out even. It's going to have a decimal. That's fine. We're just going to look at how to do the problem. All right. Remember, to find the percent of a number from the last lesson, you change the percent to a decimal and multiply. So I'm going to take 25.375%. I'm going to change that to a decimal. I'm going to go 1, 2. It's going to be 0.25375, just like we show here, times 80. And that's going to give me my answer. 0.25375 times 80 is going to be my answer. Now, here is where I would tell students, don't do this times this. Do it this way. Take 0.25375 times 80, because it's a lot easier to do it that way. Right? It's easier. All you're going to do is multiply the 8 and then move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decimal places at the end. And you're done. All right? So, we will cover more percent review. We're going to figure out figuring discounts, a lot of practical things that you got to know for the class, because even though we aren't covering new material in the new lessons, because we're in geometry now, we are still going to be covering these kinds of problems on homework, tests, and quizzes. You're going to see them the rest of the year. So we have to get them down. All right? I'll be back with more review later. Bye-bye.